Some stories are too unsettling to be forgotten. These real-life events will crawl under your skin and stay with you long after the video ends. I had spent a few days in Austin visiting some old friends. Since I live in Louisiana, the drive takes up most of the day. On my final day there, my high school buddy Tom replied to my Instagram story, asking when I was heading out. I told him I was leaving that day. He mentioned that he lived about an hour outside Austin, actually on my route home. It had been ages since I'd seen Tom, and catching up sounded nice. He invited me to stop by, and I figured, why not? I entered his address into my GPS, which said it'd take around an hour and a half. Tom and I were close in high school, but after graduation we drifted apart. We kept each other on social media, but hadn't spoken in years. When I arrived, I noticed his house looked a bit old school, not run down, just dated. The wooden porch creaked underfoot, and when he opened the door, I caught the scent of aged wood and something earthy, like an old mountain cabin. Tom greeted me warmly with a big hug and led me inside. Some friendships stay genuine no matter how much time passes. The interior matched the outside, clearly untouched for decades. The furniture looked like it came straight out of the 70s, and every step on the hardwood floors echoed with a quiet groan. It felt Texan in a nostalgic way. We sat in the living room, catching up over some whiskey. It was around 5 p.m. at that point. One drink led to another, and pretty soon I was properly drunk. The booze made everything feel warmer, smaller, but heavier too. Time flew by. Eventually, he said what I half expected. "You've got a long drive. Why don't you just crash here tonight?" I hesitated, but realized he was right. I wasn't fit to drive. I asked if I could sleep on the couch, but he shook his head. "Nah, I've got a spare room. Nothing fancy, but better than the couch." Sounded good to me. We ordered some Chinese food, and later he showed me to the room. I didn't pay much attention to it. I was beyond drunk. I remember the air inside felt stale, like no one had stayed there in ages. I barely registered anything before collapsing on the bed. Sometime during the night, I woke up. My mouth was dry, my head spinning, and the room was dark, except for a sliver of moonlight through the blinds. That's when I saw it. In the far corner of the room, on the closet door, something was hanging. At first, I thought it was just a long black coat on a rack. But as my eyes adjusted, the shape felt wrong. It had broad shoulders, almost like a person, and didn't hang like fabric, more like a shadow. My heart pounded. I didn't remember seeing anything there when I stumbled in. But I had been drunk. Maybe I missed it. I turned over, trying to brush it off. Just a coat, nothing more. But curiosity got the better of me. I looked again. Still there. I shut my eyes tight, took a breath, and forced myself to sleep. I don't know how long I was out before waking again. Not from discomfort, but from sound. A slow, deliberate creaking, like someone tiptoeing across old wood. My eyes snapped open. The room had dimmed slightly, early dawn seeping in. I turned my head toward the corner, and my stomach sank. The coat was gone. I bolted upright, my head reeling. A mix of fear and lingering alcohol surged through me. I scanned the room. Nothing. Just the closed closet. I flung the blanket off and rushed to Tom's room. He was fast asleep, snoring. I shook him awake, which took some effort. Finally, groggy and confused, he sat up. "The coat," I said, breathing heavily. "The one in the spare room, hanging on the closet." He looked puzzled. "What coat?" "The long black trench coat. It looked like a person," I said. Tom blinked, rubbing his face. "I don't even own a trench coat. And there's no coat rack in that room." I stared at him, waiting for a smirk. for him to admit it was a joke, but he looked genuinely confused. "Come look," I said. He sighed and followed me back. I pointed at the exact spot. "It was right there." Tom scratched his head. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" "I know what I saw," I insisted, my voice trembling. "I woke up. It was there. Then it wasn't." We stood there in silence, the air around us heavy. Finally, Tom nodded and suggested we check the house, just in case. We searched everywhere, every room, closet, and corner. Nothing. No signs of entry. No weird coat. Nothing to explain what I saw. Eventually, he told me maybe I was half asleep and imagined it. I wanted to believe that. I really didn't want to consider the alternative. As soon as the sun was up, I gathered my things, said goodbye, and hit the road. I almost felt bad leaving him there alone. The entire drive back to Louisiana, my mind kept replaying the scene. Waking up, seeing that coat-like figure silently watching me from the corner, then finding it gone come morning. Maybe it was a sick prank Tom never admitted to. Or maybe, just maybe, there was someone in that house, standing in the dark, watching me sleep, and they slipped out before sunrise. This happened when I was 18. I was on a trip with my parents and a close friend. Let's call her Anna. The story took place in Sweden during a road trip. We were going on a domestic vacation, and the drive from home was around 8 hours. Our plan was to visit an amusement park and camp nearby, but we hadn't booked any place in advance. When we arrived in the city near the park, we planned to visit it the following day, so we needed a spot to sleep for the night. We had brought tents with us, so my dad searched online for a campsite. He found one that seemed decent and nearby, but when he called, it turned out everything was fully booked due to a large soccer event happening in town. He tried calling other places, but every campsite close to the park was either full or too expensive. With no other option, we decided to find a spot in nature to set up our tents. My dad set the GPS to the nearest forest parking area to avoid any parking tickets. Eventually, we found a space in a nature reserve. There were a few people around, so we asked if it was okay to stay there. A woman hiking told us it was safe and that no one would bother us. We ended up camping in a small, quiet gravel lot surrounded by forest. The beach was a 10-minute walk away. We considered setting up closer to the water, but for some reason, we decided to stay in the parking area. As we started setting up, I noticed a single car parked far off in the corner. It looked beat up and empty, which was strange since it was already evening and the area seemed deserted. Still, I didn't give it much thought at the time. We finished setting up 2 tents. My parents took one, and Anna and I shared the other. After we got everything ready, Anna and I snacked and watched YouTube. It was around 11 p.m. We planned to sleep early so we'd be rested for the next day. Around midnight, while we were scrolling through TikTok, we suddenly heard a loud clanking noise, like metal hitting gravel. It sounded like it came from the direction of the abandoned car. We froze. It was followed by what sounded like a trunk slamming shut, and then the car speeding off. I quickly messaged a friend from a nearby city to tell him where we were. He replied, warning me that the beach near us had a bad reputation. Apparently, it was known for illegal activities and gangs. That message gave me chills. We sat there in silence for about 10 minutes trying to calm down. Just when things felt still, we heard a terrifying scream. A loud, blood-curdling cry from a man deep in the forest. We were horrified. I immediately messaged my mom and then called her. She finally picked up, but said she and my dad hadn't heard anything and told me not to worry. But I knew something wasn't right. We lay frozen, too scared to move. The forest was dead silent. Then we heard footsteps, slow, deliberate steps walking around our tent. I hid my phone so the light wouldn't give us away. The footsteps moved toward my parents' tent and around our car. Then they stopped. It felt like whoever it was stood there, just watching us. Suddenly, the same car from earlier returned. Its headlights lit up our tents. Anna and I dropped to the floor of the tent, trying not to be seen. I peeked through a small opening and saw the door slam before the car sped off again. Just a few minutes later, a police car came racing down the same road. After that, everything went quiet again. We were too scared to sleep in the tent, so we locked ourselves in the car. I stayed awake until around 5 a.m., keeping watch, while Anna dozed off beside me. Around 6, we returned to the tent and finally passed out from exhaustion. We woke up at 9, completely drained. I told my mom everything, and she admitted that she had heard the footsteps too, and even heavy breathing right outside their tent, like something out of a horror movie. My dad had slept through the whole thing. We packed up quickly and left. None of us wanted to stay a second longer. Despite the night, we still enjoyed the theme park later that day. But that evening, I looked up the forest online. What I found was horrifying. Not long before our visit, a man had been murdered there, stabbed to death over gang-related debts. Worse, 2 men had gone missing from that very beach and were never found. Even now I wonder, was the person outside our tent dangerous? Were they looking for witnesses? Who screamed in the forest? And what were the police really chasing? I guess I'll never know. This took place when I was 16 and still in high school. I didn't have my own car yet, so I had to rely on my parents to drive me places or just walk if it wasn't too far. It was the weekend, and my friend Haley was hosting a small hangout since her parents were out of town. My mom dropped me off at her house. Haley lived close by, just a short 3-minute drive or 20-minute walk. At the time, my mom was single and liked to go out too. She mentioned that if she was out late, I should either walk back or catch a ride, which usually meant she had a date. A few of our close friends were already there: Tina, Courtney, and Belle. The 5 of us spent a few hours just chatting in the backyard until, unexpectedly, some boys from school showed up. By unexpectedly, I mean Haley didn't tell me they were coming. I was frustrated because one of the boys had a bit of a messy past with me, and I wasn't in the mood to deal with that. Haley thought she was being clever by inviting him, hoping we'd patch things up. It just made things uncomfortable. In total, there were 4 guys and 5 girls, including me. After a while, I felt out of place and decided to leave. I think a few others left not long after, since it was getting pretty late. As I walked home, I texted Haley to let her know I was upset. She apologized and asked me to come back, but I just wanted to be home. About 5 minutes into my walk, I slowed down. I thought I heard footsteps that weren't mine. When I turned around, I saw a middle-aged man in a hoodie, hands in his pockets, smiling. He said, "How you doing?" I said hi and kept walking. We were in a suburban neighborhood, so seeing people out wasn't strange, even that late. But 5 more minutes passed, and I kept noticing him behind me, still following, always at about the same distance, maybe getting a little closer each time I looked. The walk home wasn't straightforward. I had to make a few turns, and each time he followed. I started texting my friends again. Then he said, "Nice night, huh?" Love this weather. I muttered a yeah and quickened my pace slightly, not wanting to seem like I was running. He kept talking. Every word from him made me feel worse. He asked, "You from around here?" I answered no, short and sharp. He laughed. I kept messaging friends, hoping someone could come get me. Ironically, the guy I didn't want to see earlier, let's call him Brandon, was on his way to pick me up. Then the man said something that made my blood run cold. "I'm not going to hurt you. You live by the elementary school, right? I turned to face him. He stopped walking, still smiling, but now the smile felt forced, creepy. I screamed, "Leave me alone!" and took off running. I heard him chasing after me. In that moment, I was running for my life. I screamed for help as loud as I could. That broke whatever game he was playing. He shouted something like, "Shut up, you little!" But he stopped chasing me when people started turning on their porch lights. I saw a couple come out and explained what had happened. I waited with them until Brandon arrived. It was only a short drive back to my house. When we got there, my mom still wasn't home and wasn't responding to texts. I didn't want to be alone, so I asked Brandon to stay the night. He agreed, of course. Later that night, as we were upstairs just talking, we heard someone circling the house. My room looked out onto the backyard, and we heard the gate creak open. That wasn't normal. My mom never came in through the backyard. We stayed quiet and looked out the window. We didn't see anything at first. But then, we heard a voice say, "I see you up there." I gasped and stepped back. Brandon yelled out something like, "We're calling the cops, you freak." And that's exactly what we did. I let him do most of the talking on the phone. The fact that this man knew where I lived was terrifying. What if he had followed me to Haley's house? The police showed up pretty quickly, and just having them there made me feel a little safer. Giving them a description of the guy helped too. My mom got home shortly after and was just as shaken up as I was. The cops kept a patrol car parked on our street for a few hours afterward. After that night, I never walked alone after dark again. I was even scared to step into our own backyard. My uncle came over soon after and installed a whole new security camera setup, very visible, to scare off anyone who might try anything. Thankfully, that was the end of it. But about a year later, my mom decided to sell the house anyway. She didn't want me living in fear. We never found out who that man was.